think we want to say, first of all, hello. And what a remarkable and wonderful opportunity it is to not only see you all, but visit with all of you. I think personalities and relationships are the great treasure that God has given us, our relationship with God and our relationships with each other. And so I sort of consider these gatherings when we gather in conferences as sort of family feasts. And so it's just a genuine treat for us to be here. Elisabeth, if you want to say hello. And
just thank you for having us. It's really wonderful to be with you, and really a community of love. You sit outside in the beautiful environment, listening to the fountains and the crickets at night, and it's so heavenly to experience each person and look in your eyes, see who you are, and love you. It's a beautiful experience. And I want to just shout out to the music team, the worship team. We're really feeling the music and the love. And thank you, Jackie, Sue, Jeff, the whole education team, everyone who works so hard. Thank you.
So we're going to take a little time in worship. And so let me ask you this question. This was in Susan's and Jeff's wonderful morning worship yesterday. It's a little pop quiz question. Can you hear me okay? Is that better? Yeah. It's a little pop quiz question. So what do the revelators say is the first duty and highest privilege of all created intelligences? Hey, very good. Everyone who answered correctly wins an expenses-paid trip to paradise. So let's do that. Let's actually, since we are all, I'm assuming all of us are created intelligences, let's actually take a moment, and we can't do this enough, right? Let us dip ourselves once more into this experience of intimacy with God, which is one of the titles of Thomas Keating's books, interestingly enough, Intimacy with God. And we have to pause to really understand and get in touch with the reality that the creator of everything that we see in the cosmos has placed a part of God's own self inside of us and is offering us affection and communion and relationship in every moment. And in a sense, the way we most pointedly experience that reality is in worship. So let's take a moment to refresh ourselves again in quiet communion, and then I'll bring us out with a prayer. Father, thank you for the profound gift of your presence inside of us and the promise of becoming one with you. Thank you for your presence on paradise. Thank you, eternal Mother, Son, and infinite Spirit. Thank you, Jesus, Master, Michael. Thank you, Mother Spirit. Thank you, Mother Supreme. Help us to stay in relationship with you, communion with you as we share with each other the rest of this day and the rest of our lives and the rest of eternity. Amen. Let's see if we can put the that first slide up. So I'm going to start off with a question. Yeah, is that better? Great, thank you. Please remind me again if I forget. Closer. So I'm going to start with a question. What, in your opinion, is God's will, right? What does God want from us and for us most? And I imagine there are probably multiple answers that we all would come up with to that question. But the one that I want to point to is in this first passage at the very top on the screen there. And I'm going to read it. Speaking of Jesus and his profound example of how we can live, the secret of his unparalleled religious life, it's never been exceeded in its sublime quality. His unparalleled religious life was this consciousness of the presence of God. The sacred realization that God is here right now in this moment, and again in this moment and again. And it's not something that he was born with. It's something he worked at for many years, and he attained a state. And the two modalities of his effort were intelligent prayer and sincere worship. And what he attained by this consistent effort and engagement in prayer and worship was a state of unbroken communion. He was in communication and relationship and interchange with God in every moment, despite the fact that he was engaged outwardly in any number of very significant tasks. And so unbroken communion through prayer and worship brought him to this state where he was conscious in every moment of engagement and relationship with God. There's one other passage I want to share with you that for me is intimately related to this first one. Sorry. I think I'm going to try. So there's one other passage that I want to share with you that I think is intimately related to this first one, and it's another favorite, and it is the very first sentence in the section, the consecration of choice, which I believe is in paper 111. The doing of the will of God is nothing more or less than the exhibition of creature willingness, of our willingness to share the inner life with God. So what they're saying here is that, in a sense, the entirety of doing God's will, the sum and substance of doing God's will, flows from this activity, right? If we are more and more sharing the inner life with God, which is another way of saying unbroken communion, and if we apply ourselves through prayer and worship to attain, as Jesus attained, this state of constant interior sharing with God's gift of himself, we can attain as well to a state of unbroken communion. And I like the phrase sharing the inner life. It's a little more down to earth, and it's something that I can think of often, return to often, and engage in more and more frequently. So I like that passage. That's in paper 111. So these two phrases, worship and prayer. When I think of worship, I think of the constant, ongoing sharing of a profound kind of spiritual affection, love, right? That to me what worship is, that's what worship is. From our end going up to God, it's adoration, which is a very interesting word. It's a profound form of affection, but it's more than affection. It's recognition and appreciation of the divine nature of the person we are loving, and that we're feeling that affection for. adoration. And it is, in a sense, the affection of a child who more and more fully has begun to experience this love that God is pouring into us in every moment. And so, in a sense, I think God is loving us in every moment, but I don't know about you. I'm not conscious of God loving me in every moment. But what happens when I choose to worship and I reciprocate the love that God is giving me in each moment, then I begin to experience the love that he's giving me pretty fully. And so that's the act that we can initiate and engage in that, in a sense, it doesn't inaugurate this circuitry of love, but what it initiates is our experience of it. And so I think it's really critically important to engage in this practice often, frequently. Prayer is the other modality, the two modalities that they describe Jesus engaging in. And prayer is unlike worship to me. Worship is without specific, well, it's not without specific content, but it's not dialogical. Prayer is dialogical. It has lots of specific content to it. It's particulars. And a lot of particulars the more we engage in prayer. And I think a lot of the content of prayer, for me, is instructive of how it is that we can best love and serve our sisters and brothers. So, unbroken communion. And Jesus attained it by intelligent prayer and sincere worship. Constant and conscious relationship with God. And I think what happens is when we engage in that effort through prayer and worship and begin to approach this state of constant communion, unbroken communion, what is unleashed in us is what the Revelators call the great circuit of love, which is what this next passage is about. That circuit begins to flow in us and through us. And I'd like to read this passage, and I'm going to begin just a couple of lines into the second paragraph here. So I'm not going to read it in the order it was presented. And for me, it begins with the love of the Father appears, because this is where our experience of it begins. The love of the Father appears in the mortal personality by the ministry of the indwelling adjuster. So the indwelling fragment is pouring God's love into us. And I'm going to take a few liberties with a text. Such a God-knowing son or daughter reveals this love to their universe brethren. And this fraternal and sororal affection is the essence of the love of the Supreme. And then moving up to the middle section there, the beginning of that second paragraph. So the great circuit of love is initially from the Father, through sons and daughters, us, to brothers and sisters, and hence returning to God in the form of God the Supreme. And the first paragraph for me amplifies it and just gorgeously fills it out in this, it's almost like a cosmic painting. All true love is from God. And men and women receive the divine affection as they themselves bestow this love upon their fellows. Love is dynamic. It's not a static reality. It is dynamic. It can never be captured. It is alive, free, thrilling, and always moving. Men and women can never take the love of the Father and imprison it within their hearts. The Father's love can become real to mortal men and women only by passing through their personalities, as they in turn bestow this love upon their fellows. So, worship and prayer, culminating in unbroken communion, which unleashes this tremendous flow into our being of the Father's love, and then out of us into service to our fellows. And all of this rising up in total, right, into the being of God the Supreme, who they describe as our universe mother, right? So I like to use the feminine pronoun, even though the revelators don't. It does something for me. God the Supreme, our mother, is the great, in a sense, the great accumulating summation. She is the slowly gathering, living embodiment of all this relationship and love that the Father initiated and that is flowing throughout the inhabited universes in the emerging and eternal spiritual family of God. She's it. She's the epitome of the result of what God the Father has set in motion. So I have just one more element to add to this picture, and I'm going to ask you to move up to the last passage there. Perfect. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. And I'm going to read this passage. I'm sorry. So I have just one more element to add to this combination of two things: unbroken communion, prayer and worship, in constant relationship with God, unbroken communion, which culminates in this profound circuitry of love, of affection, in us and then increasingly in the cosmos. And it's this passage. And these are iconic passages. This one most recently for me, I've been spending quite a bit of time over the last several months with this one, because it represents something to me that is very important in association with the unbroken communion and the circulation of love. Fundamentally, the Nebadon educational system provides for your assignment to a task, and then affords you opportunity to receive instruction as to the ideal and divine method of best performing that task. You are given a definite task to perform, and at the same time you are provided with teachers who are qualified to instruct you in the best method of executing your assignment. The divine plan of education provides for the intimate association of work and instruction. We teach you how best to execute the things we command you to do. So starting down here, because this begins here. We're not aware of the underlying apparatus, but the basic model is happening initially here in this initial life. But all the way inward to paradise, we are given this endless series of jobs, pragmatic tasks to accomplish. God is moving us through a process of growing us up to become fully functional spiritual partners in helping God to run the cosmos. And the interesting thing to me is that we are expected to do all of these three things at the same time. The goal here is to engage in unbroken communion and relationship with God, thus sharing love constantly with God and with all the brothers and sisters and beings we encounter, and to do all that while at the same time working in an endless number of job assignments, learning how to run the universe. So the last thought I want to share with you, and before I turn this over to Elisabeth, and I'm so excited to hear and see what she has to present. The last thought is for me a very important piece of good news, and that is in thinking to myself, good Lord, how can I ever master this astonishing combination of spiritual accomplishments? The good news for me is that in this initial life, we are really only expected to take an initial step or two toward these set of purposes. And that really to fully accomplish this combination of unbroken communion, a profound sharing of love with God and every being we encounter, and practical service, well, that is what the eternal journey is all about. Mastering these all the way from here to paradise. And I think all of that is wrapped up pretty intimately with this wonderful opportunity to love God more dearly. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you, Marvin. Thank you. How to love and serve right now and all the way to paradise. Let me just check what slide. So, in preparing for this plenary, I asked, what could we possibly say that would be useful to all of us in enriching our understanding of how to love God more dearly, respecting the fact that probably everyone here has already consecrated their lives to knowing, loving, and serving God. And following our master teacher, Jesus, who achieved unbroken communion with the Universal Father. And it came to me to share what I've learned from my intensive study of the Urantia revelation, like all of you, and Jesus in particular, as well as from my best, but always imperfect, efforts at applying this guidance to my daily life. And what I've learned from my sincere efforts to practice the presence of God day in and day out for a very long time. I'm also incorporating what I've learned from Brother Lawrence's 17th century masterpiece called The Practice of the Presence of God. He was an ordinary, uneducated lay brother in a monastery, a Carmelite monastery in Paris, France. But his experience, his religious experience, is genuine and beautiful and completely in line from what we know about Jesus' unbroken communion with his Father. Only Lawrence really tells us a lot more of the mechanics of it, day in and day out, the inner workings. Next slide. So here's some of what I've learned. Number one, before we can know God, we must love him with our whole body, mind, soul, and spirit. And of course, this has been the theme of so many of these exemplary workshops that have been presented at this summer study session. And thank you to all the workshop leaders who spent so much time to share their wisdom and help us bring out our own wisdom. We love God like a little child loves a divine, perfect, loving parent, because God is love. The Divine Counselor in paper 2 tells us, quote, that facing the world of personality, God is discovered to be a loving person. Facing the spiritual world, he is a personal love. In religious experience, he is both. To become like God, our human nature must become suffused with God's loving nature. And we must let this love flow outward, ever outward, to other people who are also wired to receive that love and grow with it. Number two, In discovering God's personal, loving nature through the presence of the thought adjuster, we find out who we truly are, a child of God. Our origin, true nature, purpose, and destiny are inseparable from God's creative nature and His plan for us and His whole creation. And number 3, in seeking God with all of our being, we discover the greatest secret in the universe, that a pure, original fragment of the first source and center of the universe of universes dwells silently and invisibly within us and every human being, and has a holy mission and limitless power to progressively transform ordinary people like you and me, the lowest personality type in the universe, into the spiritual likeness of our Creator and loving Father in eternity. It takes a long time. And the knowledge of this mysterious, almost undetectable presence should jolt us frequently out of our minds, blow our minds, and exponentially increase our motivation to cooperate with the Spirit's mission and God's dearest desire for us to be with Him for all eternity. Next slide. Number 4, this association of human personality and indwelling spirit is essentially a divine loving relationship between two persons, the Father of all personalities, and each one of us, a beloved child. And through a progressive, transformative process of persistently relating to God through faith, prayer, contemplation, worship, and loving service to other people, all His children, we discover the infinite Father is a person we can really know and love and trust infinitely. We gradually realize that the greatest gift we can give our divine parent is our wholehearted love and worship, our adoration of Him, and free choice to follow His divine will and way of being. And number 5, this whole transformative process works through the impetus and the energy of divine love and the power of the indwelling Spirit to co-create our soul and lead us to God in paradise, as we freely conform our will with God's will for us. You know, our body, mind, and personality are all encircuited in God, and our circuits must be open to a greater or lesser degree to let God's love flow through us outward to others to complete the circuit and maintain our soul's existence. We must not only feel God's love and presence, but we must embody it and express it as love in action in order to be transformed by the Spirit. And if there are blocks in this circuit of love due to fear, anger, traumatic wounds, judgments, lack of empathy for others, this flow of love is impaired. And it's good to address these imbalances in our thoughts and beliefs and emotions so that we may expand our capacity to love God and be loved by Him. And 6, growth is a requirement for maintaining our relationship with God, and growth in our living faith, growth in our capacity to love God and other people, growth in our self-identification with the indwelling Spirit, and growth in the actualization of our personality potential. Every one of us is a genius, because of the personality that we've been given with all of its endowments, and the gift of the indwelling thought adjuster. So doing good actions in the world that are driven by spiritual and cosmic values. And all we have to do, which the book tells us, is study the religious life of Jesus and how he lived it, and see how he grew from child to man. Next slide. Number 7. We can apply the same techniques that we use to develop and maintain loving relationships, intimate, trusting relationships with other people, to our relationship with God. So what are some of the techniques? Well, number 8. The most basic technique is communication. You cannot know and love God or another person without some form of communication that allows you to share with them in the spirit of confiding trust, your thoughts and feelings, your soul's desires, your doubts, fears, constant struggles, and your joys and sorrows as you live this one mortal life in a very challenging world. We need to share ourselves with God and other people in meaningful ways that build trust and cooperation and love. And we know God is always waiting to hear from us, always desirous. I think about that when I'm scrolling through my phone. And number 9, it's all about communicating with God through our thought adjuster. By talking and listening attentively, asking questions and receiving guidance. And boy, haven't we heard this in some of our workshops? I attended Michael Painter's this morning, and I thought, wow, we're playing by the same book here. And by contemplating him, loving and worshiping him throughout all of our waking hours. This is the meaning of unbroken communion. And talking involves praying, but more broadly, it's consciously sharing our inner experience with our Creator Father, just as Jesus did. And what this means to me is that I talk to God throughout the day. Whether I'm walking, sitting, I'm thinking, I'm writing, problem solving, doing mundane tasks around the house, and being with groups of people. I'm talking to him about what's going on. I'm sharing moments of beauty and insight with God. I'm asking for guidance when I'm struggling and confused, or dealing with a difficult moral dilemma, or seeking help to transform negative emotions into a more positive response so it could be helpful. And the more we ask for help, the more spiritual help we receive. Next slide. Number 10. To experience more of God, to love God more dearly, and we need to spend regular one-on-one time together in worship. We must study and contemplate God's nature with open curiosity, listening for the Spirit's response with sincere attention, and responding with gratitude and love. And by this means, we enhance our spiritual perception. And number 11, as we increasingly identify with our adjuster, we slowly shift from mainly being me-centered to being God-centered and other person-centered when we're serving. This is in our thinking and feeling, our seeing, our hearing, our doing. And we sincerely say, I'm sorry for wrong conduct, even as we truly realize that God has already forgiven us for any transgression. And we are loyal and faithful to each other, to God. Andrea talked about that. It was beautiful. And 12, we must exert ourselves. It takes effort to pay attention to God moment after moment, to stay aware of his presence in the background of our waking experience. For me, it's almost like a quiet little bubbling stream in my consciousness. And this requires a strong intention and a mighty effort to concentrate and not to be unduly distracted. It requires a disciplined mind and continuous practice over a long period to maintain this fairly steady, felt awareness of his presence within us in whatever way that you do, in whatever we are doing. And when we zone out, which we all do, and I do, and forget God, it's okay. It's natural, and he understands. And we just simply return our attention to this subtle awareness of his presence in us without ever beating ourselves up. And slowly, our consciousness is transformed by the power of the Spirit of God within us. Next slide. Number 13, almost done. After the habits of God are firmly established in our being, they become more effortless. Brother Lawrence said this. It took many years. Our inner experience becomes really like a quiet rapture because our needy egos have gradually dropped away in the consciousness of God. We live more of the time, some of the time, in a state of communion with God. And 14, we gradually begin to function more selflessly in the world, guided by wise and spiritual intelligence that we rely on as we lovingly tend to the needs of God's people, his vast spiritual family, loving others with the same divine parental love that we experience. God loves us. Next slide. And the end. Let's appreciate what Jesus said to us. I love this. When my children once become self-conscious of the assurance of the divine presence, such a faith will expand the mind, ennoble the soul, reinforce the personality, augment the happiness, and deepen the spirit perception, and enhance the power to love and be loved. Thank you.
So, can you all hear me? We have a few minutes left, I think, until about 3 o'clock, and I've been thinking while you were sharing these wonderful thoughts, Elisabeth, a little bit about a question or two where we could engage in a little bit of back and forth as we do sometimes on Sunday mornings.
Okay.
And I'm not sure Elisabeth was prepared for this, so...
I'll wing it.
Yeah, but am I correct, right? We have until 3, Tim? Yeah. So what I was thinking of is 2 passages in the Jesus Papers that to me are very related to what Elisabeth and I have been speaking about loving God more dearly and allowing that love to overflow to the sisters and brothers around us in our world spiritual family. And the 2 passages, one is where Jesus is walking, it's during one of the resurrection appearances, I'm pretty sure, with one of the apostles, and someone here I'm sure will know which one it was, and so shout it out. And Jesus says to him, let's say it's Peter, "Peter, do you love me?" And of course, whoever it is says, "Of course, Master, I love you." And the Master says, "If you love me, feed my sheep." And then he repeats the question 2 more times, each time with a little more emphasis. And he reiterates, "If you love me, feed my sheep." And the other passage I'm thinking of is the one where Jesus is speaking to the miller. I think it's in Rome, or it might be Corinth. And he says, "Give the milk of truth to those who are babes in spiritual perception." Give this spiritual food, I'm paraphrasing, in a form where it can be easily assimilated. And my question is, we're talking about loving God more dearly and sharing the tremendous harvest of what we've been given in this revelation with people all around the world who are spiritually hungry, and many of whom will never read the Urantia book. So my question is, how do we love God more dearly and share the food, the nurture that God is giving us in every moment more effectively with people who will never have the benefit of a 2,000-page revelation? How do we take the essence of this and convey it to the desperately hungry people spiritually who exist in countless numbers in the world? And I wonder if you have any thoughts. I can share a little bit, and maybe you want to share a thought as well, unless you want to go first.
Go ahead.
And this, I'll tell you, this preoccupies us at Urantia University, because we're talking about how do we share the text itself, but how do we share the spiritual treasures that are the essence of the text with those who will never be direct consumers of this revelation. And I think it's inseparable from an effort to distill the essence, the spiritual essence of the revelation, and find ways to be artful about communicating that spiritual essence, the central gospel of Jesus, and which is the gospel of the Urantia book, in ways and in culturally acceptable forms that touch people where they are, in their simplicity, but in the profound hunger of their search. And it's a big challenge. And I think many of us should be engaged with it, because I think when we do that, effectively we love God more dearly. Because God is saying to us, if you love me, feed my sheep. So yeah, any thoughts you want to kind of add to that?
One of the ways Jesus was really most effective was his one-on-one ministry, right? As he passed by. And I think that's as simple as everything we've been talking about in the workshops and the plenaries. It's befriending others, being a true friend, smiling and loving another person. And that really opens up the space. There's really a circuit. I know we feel this. It's from our heart that goes out to the person that we're looking into the eyes of. And so just even having that kind of presence and communication with another person, we don't have to teach the Urantia book. We have to show love. And didn't Jesus say that over and over again, really, to Peter and all the apostles? They will know you're my disciples if you demonstrate this kind of brotherly love to everyone. And so that's, to me, the most important thing. And some of us have a particular genius and may be called on to write books, to be conference presenters, and make videos, or whatever way we find some avenue of expression to reveal God more fully to people. That's really the task, I think, the challenge for each one of us. And it's going to be unique, because you each have a unique genius.
Yeah, I think I'll just leave us with one last thought, unless there's something else you'd like to share. I I can't remember where the paragraph is. If I had my book, I would use the search engine and find it. Some of you I know which paragraph I'm referring to. It's the one where they describe how Jesus would engage in his personal ministry. And it's just a gorgeous paragraph. And it describes in detail that he would begin by asking them questions and coming to know who they were. And then in the process, he would learn how he could best, in a sense, using the vernacular of their lives and what they had gone through, he would figure out how best to share the seminal truths of reality, of the gospel, so that they left with a gift that they could really use going forward in their lives. But what I remember about that paragraph, that single paragraph, is that it begins and ends with the same basic statement. And that statement was, invariably, one way or another, he would share with everyone he spoke with the seminal truth, the reality, that they were a beloved child of a loving parental God, and that they could enter into loving spiritual parent-child relationship with God. They could have that treasure. And so maybe when we think about loving God more dearly and feeding our sisters and brothers in any way we can, with whatever meager gifts we have, that we can think about keeping that front and center. That if we do nothing but leave them with that one profound reality and some encouragement to enter into that experience, we have done what the Master was encouraging us to do. So I would simply say pray a lot about how you can better do that. I think we all need to be in prayer for that purpose. And with that, maybe I'll just say thank you so much for being here and for our fellowship together, and looking forward to the rest of the conference. Thank you.